So here we are, we're going to try to attempt to put together our first hanging garden for succulent plants. Got a few of the materials here that I think we're going to need. Basically I got a piece of plywood, approximately 3/4 of an inch. I'm going to use a 2x4 which I'll rip in half for my side box to give me a little depth. And then I'll face it off with a little redwood paneling and give it a nice trim around the face. I got my wire mesh. Once I put the first layer for depth on, the 2x4s, I'll put tack on the wire mesh, which basically I will attach the plants to once I get to that point. You want to make sure you got a hammer, some nails, some finishing nails basically, a pencil, and tape measure. And I'm going to use a table saw to make my cuts so they're somewhat straight. This is my first attempt. You can also use a circular saw if you're pretty handy with that for your cuts. So I'll go ahead and start doing this, and I will update you as I go along. Okay, now that we've split our 2x4 in half down to 12-inch pieces, and we spliced it and cut it down. And then I took basically a cedar fencing post, which I cut to size to match up with my 2x4s, so that I can go ahead and frame the outer edges of my box, my hanging box. Go ahead and put one on top of the other, spacing it around the frame, lining it up with the edges of your plywood. Now what I did that you didn't see was when I first cut my 2x4 to fit, I went ahead and made the box that my 2x4 was going to end up being, the size, by putting the 2x4s in the box shape. And then I took a pencil and drew an outline on my plywood and cut it to fit. So now what I have is my 2x4 backboard. I have my little 1x fencing underneath my 2x4s and my 2x4s on the top. What I'm going to do is on this one here, this little box, I want to put hinges on the outer edges so that in case I ever have to open it up, I will go ahead and mount these hinges on the bottom or on the sides, depending on where I determine I want to put them, so that I will be able to hinge open the frame in case I need to change out the potting soil or my plants at any given time. So what I'll do is go ahead and sit down and think about how I'm going to tack this together. We're probably going to end up nailing it and then screwing the 2x4s together so they're good and solid. And then we'll go on to the next step. So now that I've went ahead and attached my little fence boards, my little 1x around the bottom, and then nailed them into the ply. I've nailed them from the back side so that all the screws or the nails will not be seen from the face. What I also did in the meantime is I took my little 2x4s that I split and ran a seam down there. And the way I did that is I lowered the blade on the table saw, so basically it would put a notch in there as I pushed it through without cutting the wood. So what I'm going to do is mount these, and I will put my steel mesh in that little slot, and that will give me my little spacing for my wire mesh to attach the plants to, and leave a gap for the potting soil behind it. At that point I will go ahead and attach my hinge, and hopefully if all goes well it will work fairly smoothly. So what I did was I cut my wire mesh to fit the size of my box. Before I attached the bottom rail, I slid the wire mesh up into the slotted groove that we had put in on the sides, and we did that on the table saw. Once I slide in the last piece at the bottom, I go ahead and fasten it with some screws on the very ends to snug up the square frame. And then what I added was on the one side, found a pair of old hinges I had from an old cabinet door that I put on each side, on the sides. So that what happens is after you fill everything up, if you decide you want to change something down the road, you're able to open it up, and that will separate the sod, your potting soil from your plants, and you can start from scratch again. I will put a latch on this side once I find the appropriate latch. I do not have one that I think will work too good right now. And then you can also put a mounting bracket on the back side of the ply so that you can hang it on the wall, or put a little picture frame triangle so that it will tilt up like that at an angle. That's pretty much it. Then what you do at this point is you will paint it or stain it depending on what you want to have the finish look like. And if you even wanted to, you can add a stylish frame around the edges to give it a little more style, or keep it as is and give it a distressed look. So that's pretty much how you build your hanging plant garden, your hanging garden as it's called. And not bad for a first try for me. And we'll have future videos if they get better or if I come up with better ideas. Good luck and happy gardening.